the Irish American Writers Announce, you'll be most welcome to join us. We are not Irish, really. We are not American. What we are concentrating on mostly is your artistry. So songsters, guitar players, dancers, painters, poets, and novelists. Any art that you have, you are welcome. So our business is love of art, love of each other, and have love, life, laughter.
Well, welcome to the Irish American Writers Group. This is New York Taxi Talk. This is a very unique Zoom that we're doing because it's theme oriented. And with my fellow hacks, we have probably 100 years of experience in driving a cab in New York City. I just want to remind everyone that's logging on now to stay muted. And at the end, you'll be able to ask questions if we haven't answered them all before that. Now, the lineup for today's show is, when I get done with a bit of a more introduction, we're going to have Biting Out of Greenwich Village. And coming up first will be Seth Goldman, who was quoted in the New York Times as he's the only Jew left in New York with no ambition. And then coming up after him will be Nancy Reynosa. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking we're talking about yellow cabs, but she drives a green cab out of the Bronx. And we're going to talk to her about what the difference is between the two. Then we're going to take 6 minutes off to listen to Harry Chapin. Probably, I consider it the national anthem of taxi cab drivers, Taxi. And when we come back, we're going to speak with Mel Plout. She's one of the few cab drivers that has a book that was published called Hack, and how I stopped worrying about what to do with my life and started driving a yellow cab. And then batting cleanup will be Davidson Garrett, who's known as the King Lear of the taxi drivers, who does poetry all around the city. And he even goes to New Jersey every once in a while. And the three of us, Davidson, Seth, and myself, have been christened by the New York Times as the Bards of Gridlock when we did a session there at Joe's Pub. And you can just always look that up, New York Times, the Bards of Gridlock. So I am John McDonough. I've been driving a yellow cab for 40 years. And I used to tell stories with Seth and Davidson and everyone that came to Rocky Sullivan's on Lexington Avenue. And I based a play on that called Off the Meter that was at the Cell. And then it went to the International Fringe Festival. And then for some crazy reason, the Irish Repertory Theater took it for 3 months and practically sold out for the 3 months. And I'll be taking the show to Ireland, to Dublin, to the Sean O'Casey Theatre, and to Donegal soon as the epidemic ends, if it ever ends, to see the play. And people can reach me at offthemeter.net. So the whole premise of this was to bring the fellow hacks together, and we've been together throughout our lifetime doing different things about cabbies, about going to demonstrations, going to City Hall, complaining about something, because you don't go to City Hall to praise City Hall. You're generally going there when you're very mad about something. So what I want to do is kick off the beginning. The movie that we're going to play in a couple of minutes, it's about cabbie suicide, and I had a film crew that drove around with me. And there was another guy, he's a Romanian, whose best friend hung himself in Queens when he couldn't pay the mortgage on his license. And then one of the after effects that even if you kill yourself, the cab goes to the wife or whatever, and they still owe the mortgage. There's no forgiveness on the debt. And it's a very cruel cycle that you'll see in that. And I was going to protest, and Beta V Desai from the Taxi Workers Alliance organized this one. There was a cab driver named Kenny Chow, and he went missing, but they found his cab at 86th Street and East End Avenue, right by the park there and right by the East River. And he hadn't been found in a week or so, and there was no publicity about it. So she held a press conference there, and she was announcing to the media, you know, his wife wants him back, and whatever the problem is, you can come back home, and things like that. And when I was at that, his brother was there, who also owns and they're from Burma. He also owns a yellow cab, and he was putting out the plea to his brother, but everyone sort of knew there was something wrong, because this was very unlike him, that he wouldn't come home, and that he left the cab parked at 86th and East End Avenue. And the one thing that struck me was there was a pole there, a lighting pole where you have a street light, and there was two flyers on it, and one was at the top and one was at the bottom. And I just struck the irony of life in New York City, and I think it encapsulated it. And at the top of it was still missing since March 2nd, $5,000 reward for a lost Chihuahua mix. Male, tan, microchip, scar on the snout, 13 pounds. No questions asked, just take a photo. Please call with any information. $5,000. And then just below it was missing Yao Ming Chow. And it said 56 years old, 5'6" tall, weight 140 pounds. Last seen May 11th wearing a white t-shirt and khaki pants. If you have any information, please contact 111 Precinct, and it gives the number and it gives the crime hotline. And I just thought the irony, how there was no reward money to find Kenny Chow, but here it was on the Upper East Side. There was a reward for this Chihuahua of $5,000, and it was saying, you know, no questions asked, just, you know, bring back the dog. So I was inspired to write a poem about that, because what happened was he committed suicide by jumping into the East River. And at 86 in East End, it's right near Gracie Mansion. And that's where the mayor of New York City lives. And I was just imagining, here's Kenny Chow right near Gracie Mansion, and this is where he took his life. And I wrote this poem. It's called From Burma to Brooklyn, the Medallion Death March. When you were born in Burma, your name was Yao Ming Chow, and in the taxi lot at JFK, you became known as Kenny Chow. Not finding your fortune in jewels, you went searching for gold in the shape of a taxi medallion. Thus began the Medallion Death March. Your days were 14 hours from red light in the morning to red light in the evening. Mayor de Blasio, were you looking out the window from Gracie Mansion when Kenny Chow first went missing? The poster on East End Avenue said you were missing. But you know what? Uber knew where you were. Lyft knew where you were. Douglas Shifter, who killed himself, he knew where you were. The NYPD took days to find you. Had you missed paying a ticket, they would have known where to find you. But you were floating down the East River, no longer stuck on the BQE or the FDR, no longer listening to the traffic report on 1010 winds. Going under the 59th Street Bridge, were you wondering, who was Ed Koch anyway? Passing over the Queens Midtown Tunnel, not worried about the never-ending construction. Sailing by the Williamsburg Bridge, you were no longer troubled by deciding, should I take the inner roadway or should I take the outer roadway? The traffic on the Manhattan Bridge is backed up from Canal Street, but not for you, Kenny. As you came upon the Brooklyn Bridge, you decided to anchor there with the yellow medallion around your neck that brought you to rest and to the end of the Medallion Death March. No more mortgage payments for you, Kenny. No more rejected credit cards for you, Kenny. No more passengers asking, hey, where are you from? No more red light cameras. No more looking for parking because you found a spot at the corner of 86th Street and East End Avenue. New York has no streets paved with gold for those of us that are on the Medallion Death March.
Okay, the house of my friend, which killed himself, it's right here on the right. This is the house, the brick one. My first day in the US was 8 August 1985, and I started driving a taxi. I rent a car. I pay $700 a week. After 1 year in Ridgewood, Queens, somebody stole my car. And I had to start everything from zero.
Sheila in Manhattan, you're on WNYC with the mayor.
I want to know what the city is going to do about the tragic situation that has been imposed upon cab drivers, medallion owners who invested with the city and whose contract for exclusive rights has been totally set aside, leading to suicides.
My heart goes out to these drivers and their families because I know the world changed in a horrible way for them, and as the technology changes, the economic changes swamped us all. Certainly the industry never anticipated anything like this.
See this medallion here on the hood of the cab? You need that to be a New York City cab driver. Those used to go for up to $1 million a piece. Now they're worth around $200,000.
Taxi drivers who thought they had a compact with the city over the medallion and what that meant have been left completely and utterly in the lurch.
Critics say the proliferation of ride services has increased congestion and hurt yellow cab drivers.
A rally outside City Hall. They gathered to remember the lives of 4 New York City cab and livery drivers who took their lives in recent months.
We are here today to say enough is enough. We are sick and tired of burying our brothers.
Now we are approaching the Terminal 5. This is how my day starts. You see the worst thing in New York, and you see the nicest thing in New York. You never get bored here. Even when you are the most sad in your life, you see something stupid, start laughing. There is a problem in the city, especially for a cab driver. Go to the bathroom, this is, the wipers which I use, and this is the bottle, which sometimes I have to do it in the car. I have no choice, because I cannot take the car with me.
Yeah, this is the yellow cab garage. I've been doing this a long time. A lot of things changed. After 2012, when the Uber started, then business started going down really. I started really fast. Yeah, the value of the medallion, it went down from 1.3 million to 200,000, but they still pay mortgages for 1.3 million. So it's not competitive right now. E-hail cars and the rules for the yellow cab are completely different. If you have a book with 200 pages, those are rules for the yellow cab drivers. There is no any rules for the Uber.
He fixed the tire already. Okay. It's an industry that is dying unless they take measures. You stop in Manhattan in some places, in an intersection, and you count more Uber, Lyft, and yellow cabs than people. The TLC has to stop issuing new plates every day. They have to, they have to tell people enough is enough,
Where is it? It's in the garage.
Everything should be good.
Dude, I got an Uber in front of me blocking me. Unbelievable. He's causing me agita right now. I'm born and bred in Queens, New York. Back in the 70s and the 80s, I drove a checker cab. And at that time, the checker cab had no power windows, no power door locks, no radio, and no air conditioning. You would do a shift in August, you would be completely drenched when you finished your shift. But because there was no distractions, people would actually talk to you because they weren't on the phone, there was no radio blasting. So people would talk to each other. Well, we were our own worst enemy. And this is the way it would work. You see a guy at the corner near rush hour or something, you don't want to leave Manhattan because all the money's here. You go, hey, where you going? Brooklyn? No, I'm off duty. I'm heading back to the garage. See ya. And you go by and you go up to the next, where you heading to? Oh, Penn Station? Oh, get in. And we were doing that. So it really pissed off a lot of people. And all the yellow cabs were doing that. Unless the yellow cab industry reinvents itself and catches up technology-wise, you know, we're doomed. There's a terminology that's being used by the hipsters, particularly in Brooklyn, and I've heard it from people that live in Williamsburg that live there their whole life. They're being called leftovers. They're just the last people that are living there. And I feel I'm the same way in the yellow cab. I'm a leftover. They couldn't care less. They're moving with the new technology, and if we can't keep up with it, too bad. The apps, particularly in Brooklyn and Queens, it's been a godsend because you can get a car fairly quick where you couldn't. But there has to be some regulations. There has to be a limit on what you can do. But make sure everyone in the city can make a living that's driving. See, that's the whole problem. Nobody's making a living. We're screwed.
So in 1990, I did pay for the yellow taxi medallion. And I said, that will be my retirement. And, you know, that will be my income when I'm going to get retired. I still owe to the bank more than 130,000. You know, I count, you know, had to have a medallion to give it to when I retire. And my plan was to retire at 62, to give it to the broker and collect, you know, like was in 2012 or 2013, like 3,000 a month, you know. That plan looks like it's gone now, and I am, you know, at the age of retirement and I cannot retire. I do feel like a city of New York, they robbed me. They sold me a taxi medallion and says on the paper, you have the exclusive rights to hail in New York City. And now those exclusive rights went to unlimited app cars. I cannot blame the passenger, the public. They can take whatever they wanted. It's their choice. They should have the choice. You know, competition is good for consumer. But the only problem I have, why they have to get the license free.
Who's the taxi drivers? They're immigrants. They send their kids to college, to school. They have the mortgages, credit card payments. It's a lot of stress.
The city is responsible for this. For someone to commit suicide, you gotta have big problems. You know? People don't kill themselves, you know, for $10,000 or $5,000. Those people must have serious problems.
The last guy, I knew him, yeah. He was working with me like back in 2008 or 2009.
This is upsetting.
He was a quiet guy, you know, but people who was doing this job the whole life, they don't know anything else. People just can't take it anymore.
I met my friend Nicanor at LaGuardia Airport, and the last 10 years we become very, very close. Very good friends and family friends too, you know. You know, like 2 weeks before I was talking with him and I said, you know, I have to change the transmission mount. You know, and he said, don't buy it because I think I have one. So like 2 days later, he came in JFK and said, here is the transmission mount. You don't have to buy anymore. Now, I have the transmission mount, you know, and he's gone. I spoke with him 2 days before he committed suicide. I was stunned. I was in LaGuardia Airport I got the news, and if I would know he's so depressed and so stressed, probably I could do something. It's tough. It's very tough. And even now, still it's hard for me to believe. If the city will not gonna come up with some, you know, negotiation, you know, will be more. I can guarantee to everybody, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to kill myself, but I will fight until I will die.
I buy my medallion about 18 years ago. Medallion was the gold. Medallion was my retirement. Medallion was life for my family. And now everything is gone. The next, maybe I will do the suicide.
Nicanor Ochasor invested his life savings into a retirement plan. The medallion in which he had invested has dropped in value in astronomical numbers.
City needs to step up and do something and actually put all the same regulations for everybody. There's no light left. That's what every single person feels, that there's no light in front of them.
Everything I had in 1990, I invest in New York City. I buy the taxi medallion. Now I'm at the age of 61, ready to retire. With what? My best friend, Nicanor Kishore, he couldn't take it. I will take it. I will die fighting. I'm not going to leave it like this. It is on my right. Because I am back in the city and they are routing me now. Nikolai help and I see how
It's a tragic consequence of the city of New York allowing this to get out of control. Douglas Shifter, who was a black car driver, but he had driven a yellow cab, drove up to the side of City Hall, took out a shotgun and blew his head off, and he left a manifesto and a suicide note, laying the blame squarely right where it needed to be laid, at City Hall.
Just like, Doug Schaefer said, new system of slavery. Retiring at 60 plus years with nothing after working all your life. And when you lose the family, when you lose the house, what else you have to lose?
That's all you can ask for. It's just to make a living. Maybe somehow help out the drivers that the city was auctioning off medallions for $1 million. That you come up with some sort of bridge loan or the city guarantees it. I mean, we bailed out the banks. We bailed out the auto industry. They seem to find money for corporations and for banks and everything like that, but you can't find it for cab drivers.
This happened just a short while ago in New York City. The council voted to place a one-year freeze on new licenses for rideshare vehicles like Uber and Lyft.
People have to understand that this industry grew from 10,000 drivers 5 years ago to now 80,000, and we can't continue to flood the markets. City Council had a responsibility to look out for their drivers and the working community, and they did that today.
It gives a little opportunity right now, not too much, but a little opportunity for the yellow cabs, and drivers will have some steady jobs. New York is yellow cab. Since 1930, yellow cab is the face of New York.
Well, it's reactive. It's not proactive. He's reacted to the suicide. Let's put a cap on. He's reacting to big money that he didn't put it on 2 or 3 years ago. From my point of view, it's too late. We'll see what happens now at the end of this year. Does he lift the cap? He gave a 1-year break on it? I don't know. Welcome back. And that short film there was doing the film festivals, and it's sad. It got worse to one extent. When the medallions went up to $1 million, a lot of the cabbies that own the medallions were told to refinance, and they bought houses with the refinance of the medallion that the banks would give it to them because, hey, it's worth $1 million. That's great collateral. So what's happening now is they're foreclosing on the medallions, but they're also going after the houses now that they bought with the money that they got from the banks on refinancing. And when that was first shot, there was only 4 drivers. That year, 12 drivers killed themselves. So on that upbeat note, we're going to go now to my fellow hacks. And the first one up, and I do read a little bit, and I really shouldn't because Seth is my reality buddy that whenever they need 2 crazy cab drivers for a reality show or a game show, we're the go-to guys. Now, Seth Coleman was born in Brooklyn, but he lives in Greenwich Village, and he's been driving for close to 40 years. He's performed his cabbie poetry all over the city, from Joe's Pub to the New Eurekan Theater on the Lower East Side. So Seth, is that your? Oh no, you saw that one time with me in Brooklyn when we were at the cemetery. A funny place to see it, but it was shown at Greenwood Cemetery at the Rooftop Festival there. And Seth, what we're going to do is, being that you're the fellow bard of Gridlock, according to the New York Times, you were quoted in the New York Times. One of your poems, you're going to do 2 poems, and then I'm going to get a story out of you, and we're going to keep it moving along. But anything you want to say to the film, or you can go right into your poetry?
Well, firstly, am I unmuted?
You are. We can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a great film, and it really. I don't know what to say. I mean, that film really leaves me speechless. I hope the city. I don't know where we're at in terms of the 1 year capping on the apps. So that would be a few months ago. I don't really know where we're at there. Obviously, it's a pandemic, so the rules maybe have changed. But do you know where we're at with that?
Yeah, they have extended it, but that has to do more with the pandemic, and they've also put off the congestion fee for trucks and everything, even though it's still in place for yellow cabs. But Seth, maybe you can explain what's the situation like now. I called you during the week, and there was one time when I called you, you had been out 3 hours and only taken in like $20. So what's the situation like? Because I know you drive mainly Manhattan.
Yeah, it's bad a lot of the time. You get lucky some of the time, but there are a lot of Ubers on the road. There are a lot of yellow cabs now are back to work, but obviously our taxi riding public, they're not back to work. Many of them I know in Manhattan, maybe 40-50% of the public is not around. They well-to-do, they have second homes, and they're out in Suffolk County or up in Massachusetts. So we struggle. I don't know. I'm just waiting for the end of the pandemic, and I have to be hopeful that things will get better. But it's bad.
Then maybe introduce your next 2 poems, and then I'll get a story out of you.
Well, I'm going to do actually a handful of haikus and a tanka. They're Japanese forms of poetry. A haiku is 3 lines, and a tanka is 5 lines. But first, I'm gonna, one thing that's cool about being a cabbie is this, as the guy mentioned, something stupid happens and you laugh. In the movie we just saw, something cool happens in the cab, unusual, something that I've never heard before, and that happened to me. About a month ago, I picked up actually a Belfast man, a guy named Marcus Robinson, who's a photographer, very nice man who lives in Tribeca. And he said something to me that in all my years, I've never heard before. So I put this in a haiku. Hegeman hopeful, bursts with flatlands energy. I love East New York. That's what he said to me. I love East New York. So he's a photographer that likes to photographed the flatlands of East New York. And I'm from East New York. That delighted me. So I'm going to start off with the Tonka. I'm going to indulge myself a little here because I have been suffering in the last 5 years with TDS. That's Trump Derangement Syndrome. So I'm going to read this. It has nothing to do with cabbing particularly. It just has to do with my own suffering. Hung like a raisin, with tiny hands God gave him. The Klan they adore, and the Senate they acquit, spectacularly unfit. And now here's a bunch of haikus. That was a Tonka. The crabby cabbie, now an essential worker. May God bless us all. Made $4 an hour, spent 60 on groceries. Will eat till I'm sick. Masked yellow cabbie, driving up his dead-end road, cloth hides much sadness. 5 a.m. N train, subway showers overnight. My fart just hangs there. Turmeric water fuels this cabbie shift. Is this all there is? And I'm going to read this. When the Bards of Gridlock got together at Joe's Pub almost 8 years ago, I wrote this. It's entitled Smells Like Victory. And it's about a kind of a typical morning driving a yellow cab. I arrive in Long Island City on a typical cabbie morning. I head into dirty old Manhattan over the upper level of the 59th Street Bridge. 4:50 a.m., not feeling groovy. Over the glistening East River, we are all islanders. We need to be near the water. As I pass Roosevelt Island and look south, I have a phenomenal view of the island of my dreams, Manhattan. And on this morn, the full moon kisses me, and the illuminating sky wishes this yellow cab a splendid day. I head east when I get into Manhattan on East 62nd Street, past the old 1960s WBAI studio, and head toward the river and the downtown FDR, trying to make all the lights for the small chance of a good, quick fare on York Avenue. South on the FDR, with the East River to my east, I head to Houston Street and then head west. My yellow cab singing, swinging, rocking and rolling over the tortured pavement. My early morning coffee is purchased at Gracefully on Avenue A, where the adorable, perky Korean woman, Precious, awaits. You need singles? She says sweetly. Yes, thank you, princess. You are too good to me. I purchase 2 cups of coffee, strong black coffee to fortify me, and I am off. Hey, taxi. I look over, and it is a 20-something guy, skinny with a beard, as much a caricature of Brooklyn now as I am of a cabbie of yesteryear. Park Slope? Let's go. How you doing, man? Sucks to work for a living. I'm fucked up, man. So am I, cuz. So am I. I'll take the upper level of the Manhattan Bridge. Take a big gulp of my brew, and off we go. Brooklyn, the borough of my birth. I turn on the radio, WKCR, and it is Oneida O'Day with Roy Eldridge on trumpet, and the delicious tune, Drop Me Off in Harlem. Blow, Roy, blow, lovely Anita cries, and Roy blows his brilliant trumpet, and I turn it up on the bridge. The coffee, the jazz, the beautiful river below has me driving faster. Our young man yells from the back, "You familiar with Brooklyn, man?" "Yep, born here. I live on 13th Street, but it's getting too expensive. Gotta move. But I want to stay in Brooklyn, man." "Well, you can move to East New York, where me and the tough Jews are from. That is affordable and fabulous." "What about Bushwick, man?" As if the thought of East New York was just too much. "Bushwick is okay, but my advice for you would be to find a chick with a rent-stabilized apartment and using your abundant charm to move in with her." "Wow, she will probably be a bit older than you, but it's worked out great for me. I live and have lived in Greenwich Village for 25 years in my rent-stabilized apartment." "How old is your wife, man?" 83. "Wow, how long you been driving?" "Since 1953. "Wow, that's a long time, man." To our man, I could have said 1853, because the hipsters, they have no sense of time. He leans back in drunken contemplation because the cabbie has laid so much on his plate. And I again turn up the jazz on 14th Street, going southeast, a typical Park Slope street where old beautiful brownstones mingle with attached houses. The hawk, Coleman Hawkins, blows real fine as the strong breeze has garbage blowing all over the dirty street. I barrel onto Fifth Avenue and at 13th Street, 24 bucks. And I hear the sweet smell of cash, the sweet sound of cash. The marriage of the credit card machine and drunks stinks. I smell the booze on him. Ah, to be young and to be high. He hands me 2 20s. "Keep $30, man. Thank you." "Thank you, cuz. I appreciate the handsome tip." And he is on his way to East New York, perhaps. I get out to open the back windows. My next fare might not appreciate getting into a brewery before 6 a.m. It is 5:20 a.m., about 11 more hours of driving, and I head back to the river. With open windows, I could smell the East River on the bridge. Smells like victory. Thank you.
Yeah, well, Seth, you just reminded me there about when you went for your coffee and how that's the game. Most cab drivers started out, if you didn't go out with enough singles, you would go buy 1 cup of coffee with a $20 bill and hope to get everything back in singles so you could start your day. But Seth, as I'm going to do with the other cab drivers, I want to get one great story, because a passenger will always get in and say, "Driver, what was your craziest story? What was your craziest fare?" Maybe you can give us that story.
You know, it's funny. I mentioned I was going to tell this story, and it actually came up during the week. Someone actually asked me what was the most dangerous, or what was the most fearful moment that you've had, where you really felt scared driving a cab. And really, this would be it. So this would have been in the late 80s. It was a different New York City, of course. And I had only been driving, a couple of years. And I was at Port Authority early Saturday morning, maybe at 5 o'clock. And this guy gets in and he said he's going to 147th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam. Okay. So, nothing unremarkable. He was sober, seemed okay. So I get on the West Side Highway and I get off at 125th Street. And as I'm getting off 125th Street, as us cabbies are used to, because we're used to, when we see a fare, we always look behind us to see if there's another taxi that might steal it. Some drivers are not respectful; they'll look to steal a fare. So I even by then I had gotten pretty good at seeing what's around me at all times. And there was a car behind me. So I'm going east on 125th Street, and he's right behind me, fairly close. I make a left onto Amsterdam to go up to 147th, and he's still right behind me. So, I probably stopped at a light at 133rd Street, keep going north now, and he's still right behind me. And I'm getting a little worried. So we get to 147th. I make a left. I see the guy in the back, still, he's awake. He's okay. And he says, the house coming up right here on the right. Car is right behind me and stops. So, I said to the guy, it's, $21. Now I looked in my mirror, on the left, and I see that the guy in the car behind me is coming out and he's got a hand on a gun. And there's also a guy coming from the other side. So at that moment, that would be my moment for me, where I was the scaredest I ever was as a taxi driver. And I just remember thinking, I hope they're cops. I had no idea. And they opened the doors, both sides of the taxi, and they put a gun to the passenger. And they said, get out of the car. And guy gets out, and the guy closer to me, the man closer to me with the gun says he's a police officer. The guy in the back, we have his accomplice. They robbed a bank in Mineola, and make sure you give the driver a nice tip as well. Paying the fare. Cops looked out for taxi drivers more back then. And let's remember that at one time there was no TLC. The TLC wasn't always a thing. Cops policed the yellow cabbies. And I think it was probably much better back then. There was more camaraderie. In fact, the cop then said to me, and this would never happen today because, we've been reduced to driving a yellow cab in New York City. How much do you make a shift now? Well, I said, about $100. He says, I'm thinking of driving a cab on the weekends. He said, well, but you have to, I need to see your information, make sure everything's okay, with you, and I gave him my hack license, my driver's license, all that. And they took the guy into custody, and I was free to go.
Well, that it was good that a bank robber helped pay for you and gave you a good tip through the cops. But Seth, I'm going to move it on to our next driver. And she is Nancy Reynosa. She drives a green cab out of the Bronx. And during the pandemic, when there was literally no fares in Manhattan, the city set up a program in each borough that you could deliver food parcels to the poor of that borough. And Nancy was driving out of the Armory up on Kingsbridge and delivering food throughout the Bronx. And do we have Nancy coming up right now? Nancy,
yes, I'm here.
Listen, thanks for coming on. People, they see the green cabs, they see the yellow cabs. Maybe give us a little bit of your history. How did you end up driving a green cab?
Hey, John. Hey, everybody who's here. It's really an honor. Well, this was introduced 2012 by former Mayor Bloomberg. At the moment, it was not very well, obviously, for many reasons, not very accepted by the yellow medallion industry, and I can understand it. It felt like it would have been coming in to invade their space and their business. It definitely did not go that way at all. They passed in 2013 at 18,000 to be sold in 3 years. I happened to drive AA001, which was the first green cap issued and bought at TLC Commission. And that originally belongs to my husband, who was the first buyer, but over the years he transferred over to me, but I'm the face of the green. I was interested in this project because I was a delivery cab driver working out of a car service in Upper Manhattan. And when it was introduced to me, I was over at a drivers group where we had an association where we were advocating for rights of drivers and much things. And we asked to have meetings and find out what can be better for us. And this was brought up by Bloomberg and TLC. And I went right on board. So starting from there is when I started advocating and driving a green cab. Green cabs are basically, I will always call them like a little hybrid version of a yellow cab. It said that green cabs are like half yellow cab and have livery, because we can work out of a car service with a radio or now an app, and which yellow cab doesn't. I think it did in the past at one time. And we also had exclusivity rights only to certain areas. So a green cab can work in Manhattan on 110 and North, starting on the west side. And on east side, it will work on 96th Street and North. It's allowed to drop off anywhere. So people would sometimes hail me and tell me, are you allowed to bring me to 42nd Street? I'm like, sure, of course. What you can do is hail outside those limits. Once you pass those areas in Upper Manhattan and Bronx and all the boroughs, you're free to roam. Obviously, like the story and the movie that we saw in the beginning, it hit me hard too. I've worked a lot with New York Taxi Workers Alliance, and I've done plenty of things with yellow cabs in the past couple of years also to give some sense of support, because I can feel their pain. Even though my pain is not as big as theirs, there's a lot of money there involved. My investment was much smaller. It does hurt. It hurts a lot. And I felt that I was there when we had the memorial for Chow over at the East River. And I remember meeting Abu John and Maliki over at City Hall when we did this other thing for the drivers who killed themselves. And it's been a long journey, of seeing how the ad companies came in, without saying names, came in slowly and increasing the amount of cars on the street. And I would tell guys, I don't know, I'm not liking this because the business is going down. Green Cap started pretty well. We were giving some good service up in Harlem, and we were giving some good service to some people who wanted them in the Bronx, because there's there was this idea brought up in the Bronx and Norton, Manhattan, that a real cab is the one you hail on the street and is a black car. And we all know that car services or app cars cannot pick up on the street. They have to be requested through an app or through a call, but they all pick up illegally on the street. So it's sort of a battle between illegal street hauls that take whatever you can take in your areas. And basically, that's been my battle all along. I've always been fierce opponent of the apps, or at least the way they grew. And there's still so many of them right now that it's just incredible to see the amount of cars out here and what it's done eventually horribly to the yellow medallion industry. With the green cabs, I don't have a number right now. In the recent months, we lost a couple of, maybe hundreds of green cabs who left. Ironically, these guys are not leaving the industry at all. They're going to paint their cars black and be app or community car service cars. So we've lost a whole bunch of green cabs. I think we're under 3,000 now. The future, what it holds for it, I'm holding on. Some people tell me, you're still with a green cab. Why are you still with this? That's no good. It's not working. I'm like, well, I have hopes. And I fought for this so much that I literally would say I bleed green because it's in me. I love my green cab with a passion. And even though I'd seen the worst of it and I've cried tears and I've done city council meetings in the past, transportation committee, where I've literally cried, begging for help for the yellow and mostly what I defended my green cabs, and nothing's really happened. I've at times felt like it's been nobody's hearing us. And when the pandemic hit last year, March, I worked until the second week of March, and going back to that, I'll let you guys know, the business was so slow that for the past 3 years, we've been holding on, some of us, and some yellow cab drivers also have been doing some work for Accessorize. These are work that's paid through MTA for disabled and elderly people who can't use buses and trains, and they get approved for this program. So yellow and green cabs can give them the service, and they collect $275 from each passenger, and the ride is paid through the app. That's been really helpful in these very bad times. I've been able to manage to assess rides a lot. But when the pandemic hit, I only worked until the second week of March. We were listening a lot about the cases, and I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, there's a pandemic. I don't know what's going on. And I really doubted that a lot of people would be going out. Maybe the third week of March, we were told that, TLC had hooked up with the Department of Sanitation, was actually the program, the people who were running the food program, emergency food program. And I signed up. I was one of the first drivers to sign up. And I started immediately, like a couple of days after, first out of Hunts Point. And then I transitioned into picking up at the Armory in Kingsbridge because this is where I lived. So I did this for about 5.5 months and started driving again, I say late August. And it's been very slow, guys, very slow. And I don't know, I can write a full book, like I said earlier to some of you who heard me, of everything I've been through. And it's been really hard. And I cried a lot of tears of joy at the time, but most of them, it's been really sad. Economically, financially, emotionally, is a wreck. And I'm just hoping for the best.
Well, Nancy, I want to thank you particularly for coming on WBAI and telling us the story when you were delivering the food parcels with Malachi McCourt and myself. And you were talking about driving the Bronx. I remember I didn't drive the Bronx. Even though I lived there for a while, I would drop off and try to get back to Manhattan. But the gypsy cabs at that time had a bumper sticker, and it said, "We're not yellow, we go anywhere." And
Ooh.
It was sort of ceded to the Bronx was left to the gypsy cab drivers, but you worked the Bronx. And I was asking you about some of the stories because, listen, let's face it, the Bronx is a tough borough. And how do you feel about working? I know it's your borough and you live there by Kingsbridge, but can you tell us just some of the stories about some of the robberies and things that have happened to you?
Well, I can say, John, thankfully, I haven't experienced, I'd say, nothing tragic or armed robbery. Thank God, none of that. I've had encounters with, obviously, I think every cab driver has, with a drunk person falling asleep. And obviously the people who will jump out on the fare and run. I've had that like twice. And I've had one about 2-3 years. That kind of shook me up. And it's funny because it's very similar to what Seth is saying. I picked up a guy over by the Target up in Riverdale, they would say 225th off Broadway. And he held me right in front of the store. And I don't know even how I got it, because there's usually a whole bunch of gypsy cabs actually waiting outside Target to pick up people. So I picked them up and I'm going up the hill because there's a steep hill on Kingsbridge Road. I believe his destination was going somewhere that way. I went up the hill. But I wasn't even 3 minutes into the ride when I had a big car, police undercover car, come up, put out the lights quietly, and kind of go one way on my left and kind of blocks me up there and like, stop. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? I was like, I haven't taken a light. I haven't done anything. But then they showed a badge, and they went open the door to the guy in the back. Long story short, they took the guy out in handcuffs. It looks like they were following him. And they kind of searched inside the car on the floor and everything. They were sticking their hands under the rugs and everything. And they asked me, like, if he had any talk with me, if I even know him. I'm like, no, he just hailed me in front of Target. I've never seen this guy in my life. Where's he going to? So-and-so. I can't even recall. But that was really just crazy. That just, oh my God. And besides that, of course, everyday stories that really shake you up emotionally, because John, you should know more than anybody, cab drivers can be psychologists and therapists and had humongous stuff like that. People who get on, their loved one just died, they had to go to a morgue, or they're going to prevent the stuff, and it's a lot, and you try to always, even if you're going through your own stuff and whatever, you try to put that smiling face, show compassion and support. If somebody really needs to talk, I'm all ears, and I can be a talker, but thankfully I haven't had one horrible experiences up to now.
Well, that's good. And right now we're going to take a quick break. It's only 6 minutes. It's one of my favorite songs about taxis. I thank you, Nancy. Nancy's going to be around later. We're going to take a questions and answer. She is definitely the one I see at City Hall all the time doing battle down there, and I met her at protest. But this is Harry Chapin singing the song Taxi. And the irony about this, in the song it says he takes tips and he's getting high. Now this was done before there's urine tests, because right now you might be taking tips, but you're not getting high because we have to take a urine test.
That's right.
I would say grab something to drink. We'll be back in 6 months. 6 months.
Oh no.
We'll be back in 6 minutes with Mel Plout, and she'll be reading from her book, Hack, and talking about we both worked out of the same garage in Long Island City. Longtime friend. When the apps came to town, she brought me on board for Halo, but that's another story. But right now, Harry Chapin.
That's great.
In Frisco, I needed one more fare to make my night. A lady up ahead waved to flag me down. She got in at the light. Oh, where you going to, my lady blue? It's a shame you ruined your gown in the rain. She just looked out the window. She said 16 Parkside Lane. Something about her was familiar. I could swear I've seen her face before. But she said, I'm sure you're mistaken. And she didn't say anything more. It took a while, but she looked in the mirror. Then she glanced at the license for my name. A smile seemed to come to her slowly. It was a sad smile just the same. And she said, how are you, Harry? I said, how are you, Sue? Through the too many miles and the too little smiles, I still remember you. It was some. Take her home in my car. We learned about love in the back of a Dodge. The lesson hadn't gone too far. You see, she was gonna be an actress, and I was gonna learn to fly. She took off to find the footlights, I took off to find the sky. Whoa, I've got something inside me to drive a princess. Not what my life's about, 'cause I've been letting my outside tide me over till my time runs out. There was not much more for us to talk about. Whatever we had once was gone. So I turned my cab into the driveway, past the gate and the fine trim lawns. And she said, we must get together, but I knew it'd never be arranged. Then she handed me $20 for a $2.50 fare. She said, Harry, keep the change. Well, another man might have been angry, and another man might have been hurt, but another man never would have let her go. I stashed the bill in my shirt, and she walked away in silence. It's strange how you never know, but we'd both gotten what we'd asked for such a long, long time ago. You see, she was gonna be an actress, and I was gonna learn to fly. She took off to find the footlights, I took off for the sky. And here she's acting happy inside her handsome home, and me, I'm flying in my taxi, taking tips and getting stoned. I go flying so high when I'm stoned.